Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Sonic the Hedgehog here, and I'm just me all by myself here because I just wanted to point things out to just that today is the fact that today was actually forms of the Sonic's Game Gear Marathon, specifically on the 1st of August through 31st of August. Means is that there's might be a possibilities of we might actually decide to tackle through 11 of all 12 of the Sonic's Game Gear games. Like, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Beat Machine might not count on this particular marathon, that's only because we haven't exactly beat it, and plus it's a puzzle game, so even that we're not gonna exactly count that, just to say the least. So with that being said though, me and the other toys are about to decide to tackle through the other games here and there as well, like ranging from Sonic the Hedgehog 1, and then end things off with Sonic Blast, so even then that might be roughly about quite a lot of amount of Game Gear Sonic games at this point. And as usual, we're going to be tackling through every single Game Gear Sonic games year by year basically. And then we thought we might as well have to do that. So even then though, with that being said though, I hope you guys do actually enjoy this little particular series of playthroughs we're going to be doing through this entirety of this you know, the Game Gear Sonic games marathon basically for the entire month. I'm not kidding. So yeah, with that being said though, I hope you guys do enjoy it. Now, before warning though, there's gonna be some other times, there's gonna be some flashy images every once in a while, even especially noticeable in some games, most notably Sonic Labyrinth, and especially Sonic the Hedgehog 1, and all the other titles here and there as well, which we'll get into that sooner or later during this particular month and as far as in this point in time. So, as you expected, good luck to you guys who are actually going to be watching this, and Mario's going to be doing his first ever Game Gear Sonic game marathon, so, yeah, without further ado, on to you, Mario. Let's go! Hey, what is up ladies and gentlemen, I'm Mario here once again, and I'm from, of course, the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we'll present to you guys the first ever Game Gear Sonic game we're about to do a Let's Play on, which is known as Sonic the Hedgehog 1 for the Sega Game Gear / Sega Master System. If you guys would be very familiar with these two familiar names, for these little console names department, mind you, is that those two consoles are most likely for the 8-bit system. So even then though, very similar to how it does in the Nintendo Entertainment System, but except it's been made by Sega. So yeah, this game did manage to came out on exactly the same year as the first game came out on the Mega Drive. But the difference is, this time around though, is the fact that we'll discuss more details as soon as we actually explore for this particular Let's Play and onwards, so... And as you expected, this is going to be the first ever game to be released on the Game Gear, so even then though... Oh yeah, for that Sega logo right there, that's actually a reference to something if you watched the Japanese commercial of Sonic the Hedgehog 1, for the Mega Drive version there specifically. And at the end of that particular commercial clip, it does feature the Sonics jumping through a Sega logo, which actually is something is more likely a reference to something to that, so even then I thought it was worth mentioning. So anyways, this is Sonic the Hedgehog 1 for the Game Gear. This is basically more likely a little bit more identical to the original game on the Mega Drive, but except the fact there's a little bit more difference between the Mega Drive version and the 8-bit rendition is that, for one, that there's no loops in this game this time around, which is kind of odd. And the second thing you might actually know something right off the bat though is that this is obviously in 8-bit instead of 16-bit. And also, as you probably guys can tell, we're playing this on the Game Gear, but the version we're going to be playing through, especially noticeable that we already established that in yesterday's video, is that we decided to actually go for the entirety of the Game Gear Sonic games through the likes of the compilation games, like, you know, thanks to the introduction to actually just manage to show my interest of those games on this Sonic Mega Collection Plus for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, and Sonic Gems Collection for the GameCube and PS2. But that wasn't only the fact that I was interested about this, that honor goes to Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut, although I will explain more details on the history on that as soon as we actually proceed to this game, so... So as you guys can clearly tell, you got these very familiar enemies ever since the Mega Drive version of Sonic the Hedgehog 1. And even then though, that's how we see this little crab mates, and as well as the motor bugs, and even the bus stormer as a result as well. And first you probably might as well notice right off the bat though, is that the first zone we're going to be exploring on was actually Green Hill Zone, very similar to the ones in the Mega Drive version. But except the fact that we're not going to be going through loops this time around, which is a bit odd, but hey, at least it's because of the limitations of the handheld, plus it's being more accurately the first game in the series in the Game Gear's department, so... Now, as I established earlier, this game also came out on the Sega Master System, and also for the likes of a Nintendo Wii's Virtual Console re-release. I believe the noticeable difference between the Game Gear and Master System version is the screen resolution, like... the Game Gear version shrinks down the screen for a little bit to make it more likely you always play on a handheld LCD screen and stuff. But on the Sega Master System, that you can actually play it on the full screen on TV, which you can actually see the horizon here and there. But as far as the handheld version is concerned, you really need to tell of when you need to guess of what's up ahead and what have you, because sometimes you might run into things by complete accident, like, you know, enemy encounters, especially noticeable in these tricky obstacles here and that kinds of stuff. So you get the idea. Anyways, now we move on to Green Hill Zone Act 2, or in this case it calls it Green Hill, rather than just put it on the zone itself. Because as far as I can tell, I can just call it zones anyway. Oh no! Oh wait a minute, Act 2 is exactly, feels a lot more different now. Rather than we can actually explore for the outside part of the Green Hill Zone, instead we can actually explore the cavern parts, which is always a little bit more interesting, to say the least. In fact, every single parts about this version in particular, alongside with Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which I'm pretty sure that Sonic is about to tackle for that game after when I finish this game first. But even then, between these two Game Gear titles, those two Game Gear Sonic titles are usually feels quite familiar. But even then, there might be something relatable until that time comes, but at least exploring the caverns is another newest addition here. So yeah, as far as you guys can clearly tell, is that, you know, oh yeah, right there, that's, that item right there is actually feels very familiar to you. That's actually the Chaos Emerald. Now, you guys are probably thinking, aren't any of these special stages included in this game? Yes, to be perfectly exact. But just like the ones in the original game, in the Mega Drive version / Sega Genesis version, if you ever lived in North America or Europe, depends on what systems you might call it. Apparently, in order to actually get to the special stage, you must able to collect 50 rings, and you have to reach at the very end of the gold signpost, much like how it does in the Mega Drive version. But the biggest difference is here is that it doesn't require the Chaos Emerald to get to the special stage. But even then though, in order to actually find the Chaos Emeralds this time around, is the fact that you need to actually find one of the Chaos Emeralds on one of these zones per act. Well, not 2 acts, mind you, but just only 1 act specifically, because even then though, that... Take for instance, I managed to get myself the first ever Chaos Emerald I've got in the likes of Act 2 of Green Hill Zone. And then once you grab the Chaos Emerald, once you're at its disposal, you can manage to keep your Chaos Emerald with ease. So even then though, that, much like how it does in the Mega Drive version, there are only 6 Chaos Emeralds in the game, much like how it does in the Mega Drive counterpart. But until when it gets to the point until before Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Mega Drive version most likely, not the Game Gear version mind you, because Sonic's gonna tackle through that game until whenever, again, when I decide to finish this game first. So... But as you expected it, as far as the actual latest games in the series is concerned, that we're gonna have to be constantly gonna have to be switching between either Sonic Mega Collection Plus or Sonic Gems Collection, and some of these games are entirely halved. So, anyway, as far as these special stages are concerned in Sonic the Hedgehog 1 for the Game Gear, rather than just actually navigating through the maze, or this little tilting maze, unlike the Mega Drive version, instead we can actually just able to actually grind for not only rings, but also extra lives for some rings, and some occasional monitors, which actually gives you extra lives. Or even sometimes you actually get yourselves a continues. Yes, in order to actually get yourselves a continues in this game, as you can see I've got myself 2 continues, you must able to find yourselves a continue monitor. If you manage to jump on that, then that way you can actually get yourselves a continue. So, that's how it usually works. And also you have to work out with your time limit as well. So every once in a while, in the 3rd act, in the per zone, we're gonna be faced off against with Dr. Ivor Robotnik for up to his evil schemes. So even then though, that much like how it does in the Mega Drive version, we're gonna have to beat the likes out of him. So, yeah, there's a huge difference between the Mega Drive version, no, not the Mega Drive version, the Master System version and the Game Gear versions. That in the Master System version, that it's really hard to actually reach him to jump on him. In order to actually attack him, so that you have to wait him until he's dipping down. But the Game Gear version, on the other hand, he's a total joke. Like, thanks to this little screen readjustment, or even in this case, the screen crunch and stuff like that, it just makes this first boss fight in the game absolute a joke. But even then, that's only because this actually is the first boss battle in the game, so even then, that's all we usually suggest. And that concludes Green Hill Zone, so even then, now we move on to the second zone, which is actually forms of the new original zone that was not in the Mega Drive version at all. Because instead, we got ourselves the Bridge Zone. So even then, though, that, yeah, it feels more likely similar to the Green Hill Zone, but except it's more likely based off of a more platforming genre, as well as you can actually constantly gonna be seeing those bridges a lot of times. So even then, though, that's how this level name suggests. It's called Bridge Zone, as you expected. So yeah, every once in a while we're going to be coming across into a bit of a lack of slowdown occasionally, because there are some other times that it's probably because of the emulation of the Game Gear titles every once in a while, especially noticeable in the compilation games and all that stuff. Sometimes the slowdown is immediately apparent, even especially noticeable when we get into the other games here and there as well. Well, though, to be fair, these Game Gear titles also make us re-releasing those and during, you know, Nintendo 3DS eShop every nowadays. So even then, if you want to guys able to actually experience with the Game Gear Sonic games on a handheld on the 3DS, then you can give it a shot. So even then, I kind of wish it has those only during the Nintendo Switch though, but unfortunately that's not the case. So even then, and besides that, we haven't exactly revealed the Virtual Console stuff on Nintendo Switch just yet. But even then, that can wait. That can definitely wait. What I found is super odd about it, especially noticeable in the Game Gear versions, that in the Master System version of Sonic the Hedgehog 1, that Sonic's sprite, oh yeah, before we actually get into this actually, the second Chaos Emerald, in order to actually get it, is but you have to stand onto this little crumbling part of the bridge, and if you jump off that platform at the right time, then you should be able to get yourselves a second Chaos Emerald. So that way, 2 Chaos Emeralds required, so only 4 more to go. So even then, that we pretty much gone for this game quite significantly quicker than you expected. Speaking of such though, is that this game, as far as the actual length, stage length is concerned, this is probably the most shortest Sonic game you're ever going to be experienced when it comes to the level length. Well, there are some exceptions, which we'll get into that in a moment temporarily. But even then, unless if you want to actually encounter these special stages just to begin with. But to be honest, these special stages are entirely optional though, if you want to actually get yourself some whole bunch of rings for your score count, or if you want to be very curious, if you want to get yourselves a continued monitor. So even then, you should be able to get yourselves a comfortable experience. If you want to desperately need to get yourselves a continue box, even then, if you do manage to obtain that, then you should get your journey experience of this game a ton bit more easier. And I really do apologize that this screen constantly shifting left to right. It's probably because I kept on bouncing between these two different, bumpers for the entire time. Very much like how it does in the Sonic the Hedgehog 1 special stage. And even Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1 special stage. For Episode 1, that is. So even then, I really need to get out of this though. Come on. Come on, Sonic. I know you're having a fun time there, but I just want to actually move on to the next act. Specifically, Bridge Zone Act 2. So even then, that we can probably guarantee how this is going. There we go. Oh, that was a lot of fun bouncing hectic going on. So, anyway though. So, do I get my extra life yet? Of course not. And what's up with this little fuzzy noise? I really don't know why. So anyways, now we move on to Bridge Zone Act 2, where we're probably going to be introducing to probably the most infamous part about this level, and that was the form of auto-scoring level, or in this case, an auto-scoring section. Yes, there's going to be plenty of times we're going to be coming across into the auto-scoring sections every once in a while. Well, at least I kind of think about it. I'm kind of glad that this is the only auto-scoring level in this game, because during the later one, it's going to be most likely platforming sections. So even though that there's no auto-scoring sections here and there, so even though that might be kind of a cool, good thing. But sometimes auto-scoring levels can be subbed up as one of my least favorite type levels, because if you fudged up at the end, you gotta do the entire level over again. Just like how it does if you ever played through, you know, Super Mario Bros. 3 before, so And as far as I can tell, also Super Mario World as well, but since I haven't usually played Super Mario World for quite a while now, so even then, yeah. Whoa, god, good grief. That enemy's almost catch me off guard, because if I get hit by him, I might get knocked over, and plus I might fall down to the pit, so even then, that thanks to those bridges being crumbled over, so even then, that I need to be very extra cautious around here. So, anyway, so with that being said though, that Sonic the Hedgehog 1 for the Game Gear, that it feels a little bit interesting compared to the Mega Drive version. Although you get these very familiar items back, just like how it does it from the Mega Drive version. Like, you're still able to obtain 10 rings if you manage to see this little ring symbol, if you manage to obtain the, you know, the rings monitor, as well as the Sonic's face actually gives you an extra life, as you guys should probably already saw. And as well as the shield, which actually gives you a barrier shield, of course. But even then, though, what makes it so odd about the shield in this game specifically, especially in the Master System version as well, that what I found super odd about it is that sometimes it just does like a flickering at one point. Same goes with how it does it when the Chaos Emeralds handles. But even then, though, sometimes the Chaos Emeralds can be seen visible, while other times it might be invisible occasionally. Well, usually it's visible right now in the results screen, but for instance, the reflective shield and what have you, it just sometimes shows up either Sonic himself, while other times it just shows Sonic clearly disappears, and then just constantly showing the shield for the entire time. So that's a little bit odd there. I think it's probably because of although it's not so bad on if you ever play this on the TV, but if you're trying to actually capture recordings, something like that, from when you're trying to use the capture card and stuff like that, sometimes it happens, probably because of the sprite limitations and all that stuff, so even then, that's how it usually happens. So, anyway though, so here's the 4th special stage right there, and right off the bat though, I've got myself a 4th continue, so we should be able to get my journey experience comfortable now. So even then, I was really hoping that was going to happen, because during later on, during some other parts throughout, that gets even much more harder as you progress. For example, we're going to be hit on to the Act 3 of Bridge Zone, so even then we're going to come across into a second boss. Before we actually proceed to the battle, we must be sure we need to grab ourselves an extra life, because extra lives do help, and especially in case of the, you know, some of these levels can get really hard, especially longer as you progress. Alright, so here we go with the second boss battle in Sonic Game Gear version, and sadly I've died, and there's our first death in this particular playthrough, so that's kind of a little bit dumb thing on my part, I'll have to say this much. But anyways, let's try that again, so hopefully we might as well get ourselves a second chance. Now, there's another big difference between the Master System version and the Game Gear version, is that the introduction department on this particular boss battle feels different. In the Game Gear version, you're going to be fighting Dr. Robotnik in these 2 sets of bridges connected to each other. But even then, sometimes I found the Game Gear version is much more harder than the likes of the Master System version, I find. It's probably because in the Master System version, you have to fight him when there's involving water, when you have to jump onto one of those 3 platforms, which I found is super easy to actually deal with, but I found the Game Gear version is much more tricky and difficult, because you're going to be dying quite a few times every once in a while, because for example, the hit detection can be a little bit too finicky at points, and sometimes this really annoying projectiles can catch you off guard, can either shoot it from the left side, or even the right side of his machine, so even then, it's really luck-based kind of thing about what side he's going to shoot on. Now, I was quite lucky in the 3rd time's a charm, by the way, because even then, he constantly shoots him from the opposite side when he was about to attempt to shoot at. So even then, that sometimes it's really easy, but sometimes it might be catch you off guard at points, even especially if it's both your first time playing it. So, anyways, we're going to have to leave things off here, folks, so join us next time on Let's Play Sonic the Hedgehog 1 for the Sega Game Gear / Sega Master System. It's the fact that we're going to be moving on to the 3rd zone, which is essentially another new zone, the Jungle Zone. So see you guys then. Later, fellas.